Hello, my name is Sarah Walsh. Today, I'll be talking to you about a very pressing issue in the United States, obesity. The obesity rate has risen significantly and continues to rise. Various changes made in the last 50 years all play roles in the rising obesity rate. Portion size, food quality, amounts of physical activity, etc. are all factors in the amount of Americans who are obese. Since the late 1970s, the obesity rate has greatly increased. This is a very serious problem in the United States. The obesity rate is still rising, though it has leveled off some. As you'll observe in the graph, there is no sign of a decrease. Although the graph only goes through 2010, it is clear that nothing is expected to improve. Money plays a role in the obesity rate as well. Foods of a higher quality, meaning that their nutritional value is higher, are often expensive. Lower quality foods, such as fast food, have a lower nutritional value and are higher in fats and carbohydrates. Lower quality foods are typically less costly though, so if you don't make enough money to afford foods with higher nutritional levels, your only option is to buy the less expensive, sometimes lower quality foods. Many Americans are in this situation. Various establishments with poor quality foods advertise with money being the focus. This is to show Americans that good food can be affordable, but the food being advertised typically does not have a high nutritional value. But if all an individual can afford is lower quality food, their chances of becoming obese are therefore even higher. Do you think money is a significant factor in those who are obese?
I think it's possible, yes.
How so?
Well, I think better quality food is more expensive, and processed food, food from fast food outlets is quite cheap. It's very poor quality, has a lot of sugar and fat and salt, and you're more likely to gain weight eating a diet like that. Buying fresh vegetables is quite expensive.
What sort of foods do you personally buy, and where do you shop?
I shop mostly at Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and at the Baltimore Farmers Market. Um,
Okay, do you think food is expensive?
I think food is very expensive. Yes, I spend a lot of money on food. Yes.
So if you and your husband had a minimum wage income, do you think you would still be able to shop at these stores?
Uh, on occasion, probably yes, but no, not no. I mean, maybe at the farmers market. I think if I had minimum wage jobs, my husband and I, and was our income, I think we would probably be on food stamps, and I think we would have to shop at Aldi's, or I go to food pantries and stuff, because I can't imagine that would provide a minimum wage job would provide enough money to pay for fresh vegetables for most meals, and organic meats and things like that I buy.
So if you were at a minimum wage, would you and your family have a greater chance of becoming obese?
It's possible. I mean, if we couldn't afford better food, I think it's possible. But that's probably not a good question for me, because I'm really cautious about the quality of food, and I'm also willing to pay more money for food than maybe some other people. But if I didn't have any money and I had to buy really, really poor quality food, yes, it's entirely possible that my family would be heavier.
So what do you personally think the best solution would be to helping the America's issue with the obesity rate?
I think I think the best way would be to eliminate all chemicals from the food that's grown and produced and in America, or everywhere in the world. Obviously, you can't control that, but elsewhere outside the U.S. But if you took all the flavoring, colors, artificial colors, additives, excitotoxins, artificial sweeteners, preservatives out of the American food supply, you would be forced to eat locally produced food, and you'd have to cook food because you wouldn't be able to buy processed food, because processed food would taste like junk after a day or two. You couldn't buy a candy bar that had been sitting on a shelf for a month because it would just taste like cardboard.
Portion sizing has proven to have a correlation with the obesity rate as well. From 1983 to 2003, the size of a hamburger expanded by 23%, soft drinks by 52%, and bagged or boxed snacks like crackers, chips, cookies, and pretzels all increased by 60%. In connection with those numbers, the prevalence of obesity in adults rose from 14.5% in 1971 to 30.9% in 1999. Americans currently eat 1,595 more calories than they would eating the exact same meals 20 years earlier due to the expansion in portion size. The older food pyramid that many children were taught in school was surprisingly misleading. It glorified carbohydrates, which are in fact not nearly as beneficial for you as some of the other food groups, such as fruits and vegetables. It only suggests about half as many fruits and vegetables, and discouraged the consumption of fats, especially salt, oil, sugar, and butter. It has been found that certain fats, such as olive oil, are actually quite beneficial for your body. Fruits and vegetables, along with protein, should be the largest sections instead of carbs. How do you feel about the current portion sizing?
I think that in the States, the current portion size is much larger than it needs to be. And I think the trouble with that is that it trains people that large portions are appropriate when in fact they're really not.
Do you think the old food pyramid was misleading at all?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's possible that it ended up leading to an increase in obesity. So the primary message from the previous food pyramid was that eating a lot of carbohydrates was a good idea. The whole bottom part of the food pyramid, the largest portion was carbohydrates. And we were supposed to minimize fats. That was sort of the trend for the past maybe 30 years, is high carb, low fat. And over that time, the obesity rates have significantly increased instead of decreased, which is what one might have expected to happen. And there are many reasons for that, but one of the reasons for that is that high carbohydrate diets are not good for you. They increase your blood sugar, which increases your insulin level, which increases your hunger and makes people eat more. And so it has the effect of actually making people eat more, whereas fats tend to have satiety, meaning they make people not want to eat as much. So the whole idea that you would eat more carbs and less fat ends up making people hungrier, and when people are hungrier, they eat more. So the newer thinking actually is that fats are not as terrible as we thought they were before, and that carbohydrates probably should be minimized.
Personally, why do you think that the obesity rate is so high?
There are multiple reasons why. I think one of them is what we just talked about, which was the whole societal push to eat a lot of carbohydrates. And everybody learned, when I was younger, we thought pasta is a healthy food. If you're trying to eat healthy, you would eat pasta. So the whole population started eating a very large amount of carbohydrates, which was not a good idea and had the effects that I talked about before. So that's one thing. Certainly there's issues of portion size, particularly when you eat at a restaurant, but when we get sort of normalized to large plates and filling up large plates, then our portion sizes go up. It takes a while to know that you're full, so if you have a large amount on your plate, by the time you realize and perceive that you don't need to eat anymore, you may have already eaten more than you needed to eat because you put so much on your plate the first time. I think being sedentary is a big problem. So whereas kids used to sort of go out and play and ride bikes in the afternoon, For the past multiple decades, that's not been the case. Right now, maybe they're playing computer games or on the computer, but even before that, they're watching TV. And so that's a significant problem. Also, eating in front of the TV is a significant problem. There is evidence that children who eat in front of the TV are significantly more likely to be overweight or obese, and that's because when you're distracted and you're eating, you might just continue to put your hands in the chip bag and eat way more than you would if you just took out a small portion size. I also think that advertising junky, highly processed foods on TV is not a good idea, and in other media is not a good idea, and it just sort of has normalized that eating processed junky foods is acceptable and pleasurable and good, and all of those things add to the obesity epidemic.
So what do you think that the best solution, in your opinion, would be?
It's multifactorial, of course. Moving is important, so getting kids and adults in the habit that they should move their body in some way every day, I think is important. In terms of changing dietary behaviors, I think that trying to minimize carbohydrates and maximize vegetables, fruits, and protein is really important. But one concept that I think is important in changing people's dietary habits if they're not where you want them to be is really adding things rather than taking things away. So if you tell people, well, you can't ever have sweets, that's hard for people to sustain throughout their lifetime if they're used to eating sweets, for example. But you can add in vegetables, add in fruits, and change the way people think about what they eat so that if you pile a whole bunch of vegetables on the plate, it's okay to have some carbohydrate, which is very different than filling a whole plate of pasta and either not having a vegetable or just having a very small amount of vegetables. So I personally think encouraging people to eat lots of vegetables, lots of fruits, rather than focusing on what they can't have or dieting, but sort of adding healthy, real foods that come from the earth, foods of many colors and foods that are grown, focusing on adding healthy, real foods and minimizing processed foods and carbohydrates, I think is the best way.
Michelle Obama has proposed a new nutrition label on foods. It would give the exact serving size and a larger, bolded amount of servings. The clearest item on the label would be the calories per serving, and other sections would be made cleaner and easier to spot. This would give people a better awareness of what exactly is in what they are eating. Thank you for watching. I hope now you are more informed about this issue.